Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Arroyo Live. From the Pasadena Media Center, I'm Joe Carbonetta. This program is produced by Pasadena Media to help enrich the community through informative and meaningful conversation. Remember, you can share your questions or comments with us anytime at arroyolive@pasadenamedia.org. For more than a year, the nation sat in isolation, virtually helpless, the result of a worldwide pandemic, the likes of which hadn't been seen since the Spanish flu more than a century ago, and which came to be called COVID 19. Much has been learned about the virus and its effects since it was first formally identified in December of 2019. And though the medical community was able to create safe and highly effective vaccines and make them widely available to combat the threat, there is still much to learn and perhaps a long way to go. Many people remain unvaccinated for reasons as diverse as the people themselves. And debates continue to rage about whether the renewed push for the use of facial coverings is necessary or even effective. In the midst of it all, cities across the nation began reopening, trying to recapture a sense of normalcy and perhaps undo some of the economic devastation caused by the nationwide lockdown, which became necessary to slow the spread and allow time to create those highly effective vaccines. Tonight, we take a look at the reopening process and perhaps some of the issues we've yet to overcome. Please join me for Arroyo Live. This evening, I'm joined by prominent members of the City of Pasadena. City Council member Tyrone Hampton, Chamber of Commerce President and CEO Paul Little, and Jeannie Goldschmidt, Executive Director of the Convention Visitors Bureau. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us. I'd like to take an opportunity to have each of you tell our viewers at home a little bit more about yourselves. Paul, if it's okay, I think we'll begin with you.
Paul Little, I'm the president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce and Civic Association of Pasadena, commonly known as Pasadena Chamber of Commerce. We're a business membership organization that's dedicated really to the prosperity of our members and the support of the local economy. Personally, my history, I've been in Southern California since 1982, a dozen years or so in the entertainment industry, transitioned to public relations and communications in 1995 while still working a full-time job. Was elected to the city council, 12 years on the city council, and then retired from that in 2007. And about 6 months later was recruited to run the Chamber of Commerce here in Pasadena, a job I had no clue what I was doing for probably the first couple of years, but it's been great fun. And Pasadena is a wonderful city to be living in and working in. My office is near Lake in Colorado, and I live a mile north of there. So doesn't get a lot better than that.
All right. Well, again, thank you for joining us. Jeannie, can we move on to you?
Sure. I'm the executive director of the Pasadena Convention and Visitors Bureau, or Visit Pasadena, as we like to say. We're the destination marketing organization that has the task and the pleasure of promoting Pasadena to bring leisure travelers, business travelers, citywide conventions to our area. It's a fantastic job. I've been with the Bureau for 10 years. I was a transplant from the Northeast, where I spent my career with convention centers and CVBs. But I will say that Pasadena has been my favorite and will remain my favorite destination to represent to date. When I moved out here 10 years ago, I met my husband, and I am the proud parent of a 3-year-old, rambunctious, soon-to-be linebacker toddler boy, Grady.
All right. Thank you again for being here this evening. Councilmember Hampton, I've saved you for last because you are joining us from a remote location, and so we don't have live video of you this evening, but we do have you here with us. Again, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule, and if you would please tell our viewers at home a little more about yourself.
Joe, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here with a fantastic panel. Um, I am Tyrone Hampton. I'm a fifth generation Pasadenian. I'm a small business owner. I am a city council member in the city, also the chair of the Pasadena Convention Center. And Jeannie is fantastic. She does great work there. I'm also on the board, or I'm sorry, a commissioner of the airport authority for Pasadena, Burbank, Glendale. So it's just a few of my hats. Oh, I'm sorry, and I'm also the chairperson for economic technology for the city of Pasadena, so EdTech committee. Just to give you some background, and then also I have a 6-year-old child. Her name is Peyton. She's fantastic and going to the second grade. Excited about it. Second grade, but it seems like the third year of college. She's got all the answers.
They do.
And with all that going on, it's very easy to understand how you could be so busy. And again, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us, if only an audio program. The discussion tonight certainly is about the reopening of the city of Pasadena, and in general about the reopening of the cities in the wake of hopefully the worst of the pandemic. But I'd like to begin by talking a little bit about the difficulties that were caused by the shutdown and sequestration. I think it's important to understand everything that has happened before we can talk about what it means to reopen. With that in mind, I would like to ask each of you to share your thoughts on how destructive it was economically for the city of Pasadena, if not nationwide, to have been closed down for more than a year.
If I can, for a lot of business, it was incredibly devastating. We won't really know how many have closed permanently for probably another year, because and thank you, federal government, stimulus money and PPP loans and things like that have extended the life of quite a number of businesses, along with rent moratoriums and all of those kind of things. But at some point, all of that runs out and everything comes due. I think nationwide, they're saying somewhere between 30 and 40% of restaurants have closed permanently. And I think we haven't seen quite that number in Pasadena, but we have seen some prominent places close, and it's even worse for fitness centers, hair salons, who were completely shut down and had no income for between 12 and 15 months. So I think in that instance, we're going to see a lot of folks. The guy who cut my hair is gone. I had to find somebody new. He closed up shop, sometime in the middle of all that, and I don't know where he is right now. I was hearing a lot from fitness centers, yoga studios, the folks who had no means of income, could not open. And if you remember, last fall when they could open outdoors, we were all blanketed in a haze of smoke. So even though they could be open outside, they couldn't be open outside because their customers couldn't breathe outside. It's been very devastating for a lot of businesses. We will not know the ultimate impact for quite a while. I'm not even going to talk about hotels, and because Jeannie can talk about that stuff, much more of an expert than me. The real challenge, I think, for us anyway, as a chamber, is the local small businesses. The locally owned small businesses are the ones that have suffered the most and don't have necessarily resources to wade out the next 12 months. And so we may see a dramatic shift in the retail landscape in Pasadena when all of a sudden a lot of the locally owned places just aren't there anymore. I hope that's not the case, but it's quite possible that it will be.
I definitely concur with Paul, and I would say that Paul, I just thought you were growing it out because it was looking cool, man. That's it. I know your barber. I know your barber left on you.
Well, no, this is all. I have a new one.
I was about to say, I like it, man. I was like, I like the beard, man. I think it looks good.
I have a new one. As I was telling everybody 6 6 months ago. I'm reverting to my 1982 self, but the hair and the beard are the wrong color.
I heard. Well, you see, my barber been out of business. Usually, as you see in my picture, right? But I would say that yes, it has been a detriment to businesses, but some businesses that were kind of holding on, they were able to retire. So I think that I talked to a couple business owners that are like, you know what? I'm not going to put any more of my life savings into this business. Now I am stepping away from it. I'm going to retire, do something different. Um, Also, I would say that I think, because we've already heard and we know how bad it is, right? But the silver lining of it is there are a lot of new businesses that have opened up through this, right? Different shipping companies, different delivery type services. Also, a lot of our mom and pop stores in Pasadena, smaller businesses, um, some of the ones that I know, like retail locations, said that they're feeling more supported because I think people woke up and found out that the Amazons of the world are making billions and billions and billions of dollars, and our local economy is actually suffering. And as soon as the 15th hit, and prior to that, people started patronizing more small businesses, and I have to say that that's really good work from at least Pasadena wide. Really good work from Jeannie's team and advertising and actually doing the work to make sure that our residents go out and patronize some of our local businesses. Like Romans at one point was saying that they were thinking they were going to close. And last time I checked, it sounds like that they're doing much better than they were before. So just to mention one local business in Pasadena that's a long standing business. But that's just the silver lining to it. Also, another silver lining to all this is people were able to spend a little bit more time with their family and getting to know people that they hadn't had a chance to know before. So, and also, just once again, spending a little bit more time with family. And I think that that's definitely a positive. But Paul was perfectly right. I mean, the PPP loans were able to keep some of these businesses afloat, and we will see, in a year if they were able to help and if they're still around. And I'm crossing my fingers with the advertisement the city is doing, as well as the CBB. We will be able to help our local businesses stay afloat, and those that have started up new businesses throughout the pandemic. I think that they're going to thrive. So um, that was just add my 2 cents to it.
Yeah, and I'll pick up on that and say that, certainly at the beginning of the pandemic and through the pandemic, we lost, you know, hundreds of meetings and events that were booked here in not just the convention center, but our hotels hold events, different venues around the city. So when that was all shut down, there was certainly a dramatic impact on our budgets and how we market and present ourselves, because nobody was buying, traveling. It was all just shut down. So we pivoted and we did a lot of campaigns that supported the message that you should shop local, dine local, stay local, right? Because 6 months in, 7 months, 8 months in, people were tired of being at home. And our hotels, while open, were really suffering with low occupancy. And it created an opportunity that maybe you just needed to get out for the night. Maybe you could stay locally and just spend a night away, and really reconnect with your local community. So we saw that happening. Certainly, we see that turning around. But it was a dramatic change to what we did. We were able to host a few essential events. So different functions of government were still allowed to meet, and the convention center being so large, we're able to hold those meetings, have people social distance, follow all the guidelines to continue to have, things like the jury impanelment. They're used to going to the courthouse, but that wouldn't allow for social distancing. Exams for the city of Pasadena to continue to hire and recruit talent still need to take place, but with social distancing. So we were certainly able to capture some of that. It certainly was different than the business that we usually book, which is citywide conventions and large banquets. But we were grateful to be able to host some events here during the pandemic, and we look forward to all of that returning.
It should also be.
I mean, I do think one of the things that happened was that local people looked at local businesses and realized that they needed to support them.
Yeah.
And you know, if they wanted them to be here, you know, so people, for a while I was actually, I've lost a bunch of weight because I walk my dog so much. But 3 days a week getting takeout lunch and dinner from different locally owned restaurants. Because we wanted them to stay. And so everybody was pitching that same message. And I think people in Pasadena actually paid attention.
Great point. I'm sorry if I could add. I think it is priceless and it goes both ways. I mean, our team here, we had the privilege of being able to facilitate delivering over 90,000 meals to those in need in the community. And the team that was doing it got just as much out of it, engaging with the people they were dropping off meals with that might not see anyone that day. So I think you're right. It was really nice to see the kindness and to see helping out people all around the city that might have just needed a little extra. And the team loved it. They just were able to just engage in a meaningful way.
Well, it bears mentioning for the city of Pasadena in particular that from an economic standpoint, there were other problems caused by the closures. Certainly, there was a massive loss of revenue from major events like the Rose Parade itself and the Rose Bowl games, as well as numerous other large public events that normally take place throughout the year, bringing in a precious revenue for the city. As things begin to reopen now, we just recently saw the first America Fest in a year. The previous years had to be virtual because of the need for social distancing. But what does reopening mean for the city now?
You mean the city government or the city as a whole?
Both, as a matter of fact.
Well,
I'd like to explore both of those.
The city government's got $52 million from the feds. They can cushion the blow with a little bit. And Jerome will be talking about how you ought to spend that money. But I think throughout, though, I mean, honestly, the city didn't know they were getting that money till March, a few months ago. So there was a lot of panic in the middle of all that. And to their credit, it took a little bit of hounding and haranguing, but the city came up with money to support small businesses with a couple of rounds of grants, $10,000 round and then a $5,000 round, which for folks that I know who got them, it was a lifeline. So that was a real aid to folks when the city was I'm sure looking at their own finances, thinking where's this going to come from? Well, we got to do something. So I think the city did step up when they were very much in doubt. The convention of the Rose Bowl was devastated. Their income, the city had to cover their debt service. And the deal with the Convention and Visitors Bureau is the city covers it anyway. But they all, everybody had to tighten the belt. At the chamber, I didn't want to lay anybody off. We're all furloughed 2 days a week, so we're only working 3 days a week and being paid 3 days a week. But that's what you have to do. And the city held it together for their people as well, and did a really good job, I think, of supporting what needed to be supported in the city. They're going to face some financial issues, maybe, but they really stepped up. The council stepped up with grants, as I said, but they also stepped up with supporting recommendations from the Transportation Department, Public Works, the Planning and Development Department that fast tracked opening outdoor dining and restaurants and fast tracked several other permitting processes and things that needed to happen really quickly. And they stepped up to do it, to support the businesses. And I don't know how many meals the city served to residents here who may not have eaten had it not been for the food they were getting through the city programs, not just the meals program, but the other subsidized programs and the school district was doing, and all of that. So I think the city deserves a lot of credit. And my biggest hero in all this has to be Dr. Go with the public health department. we all supported getting, keeping businesses open. Those people saved lives. They really did. So I give a lot of credit to the folks in the city. We argue about things all the time, as Tyrone knows, but they deserve a lot of credit. And I think the city will come out of this okay. It may be a little bit different in the services that are offered and how and when, but I think the city will be okay. But Councilmember Hampton has a much closer finger on that pulse than I do at this point. So.
Well, I'd definitely like to get into changes that may be forthcoming a little later on in the program. But I would be curious to know, Jeannie, your impressions and Councilmember Hampton's as well, as far as what this reopening means for the city, and again, both for the government and for the residents.
Sure. Well, I'll start. So, we're thrilled for the reopening. It means, a lot of things for different people. It means re-engaging with loved ones and coworkers that you've not seen, in a long time. So on a personal and professional level, it's just great to connect with people. And then it's also being able to welcome visitors back and to see how well they can enjoy our destination, how they can support our hotels and our restaurants. Tourism is really a big deal for Pasadena, and we have a lot to offer. And for those activities to have gone almost dormant for so long, it's really encouraging to see those activities coming back, to see an America's Best take place, to hear about what's coming, down the line for conventions that I'll talk about a little bit later, and a Rose Bowl schedule that's starting to pick up. It just really means jobs for our community. And it means just getting back face to face and meeting with people and just having that connection again.
No, absolutely. I have to agree with what Paul had said, and, as well as Jeannie. And I don't have to belabor the point because I appreciate Paul mentioning it, because otherwise it seems like a council member is trying to pat himself on the back for the work that we did as a full council. So I do definitely appreciate Paul's mentions, but everything was definitely true, and we did all of that work prior to um, us knowing that we were going to receive $52 million. We just did what we knew was right for our community at the time. We knew that there were going to be people in need. We knew that businesses were going to suffer. And so we did what we had to do. We also, as Paul had mentioned, making sure that our restaurants could open in a responsible manner. Doing outdoor dinings, we got very creative with our outdoor dining, and we're still working on that, so that our restaurant can stay open, as well as any retails that are using outdoor space for different things. I've been seeing yoga studios using their outdoors. I've seen also some gyms using outdoor space. So we got really, really creative, and I would say staff moved at a pace that I've never seen staff move in. Right, almost moved in a pace of I only say almost, as a real business, because everybody knows that government moves at snail's pace. Everything is just a little, slow. We got to test this out. We got to get a study, and then we got to study the study. But in this case, they moved very fast and figured out there was going to be significant economic ramifications, and we were able to help our businesses bounce back. And so reopening was really interesting, because the 15th we opened up and it was Mask Off Like a Future song. I don't know if anybody under the age of 30 would get that reference, or close to the age of 30 would get that reference. I have lots of young nieces and nephews. But I would say that now, the Delta variant has now kind of thrown a wrench in things, right? And Jeannie will probably even talk about that. I mean, we've had a convention council on us, because they said, with the new mask requirements, it just doesn't make sense for them to move forward with their convent, or their event at our center. Maybe they're going to look for another place, or maybe they're going to postpone it in total indefinitely. But I think Jeannie would probably have more information about what they decided to do long term. But that's happening across the board. I mean, even wedding venues. I've heard from other organizations that have small wedding venues that said, we had all these things that were so totally booked, and they're like, well, if LA County's putting this new mask requirement on us, we're no longer going to use your venue because we have to use an outdoor venue, so that our guests could feel totally comfortable. Um, so it's interesting, where we're at. I definitely understand that we're trying to, curve this virus before it turns into, a new variant. But at the same time, the city of Pasadena did a fantastic job, and big shout out to our health department when it comes to this, definitely, on the rollout of the vaccinations.
Well,
Our rollouts of the vaccinations were like no other. 88% of our residents, at least 80% of our residents are fully vaccinated, and up to 88% of our residents have received, a at least one dose. 12 and up. So,
Councilman Hampton, I
I'm
would
sorry. Go
like
ahead.
to, if I'm sorry to interrupt you for a moment, but I would like to touch on something that you mentioned. There are new mask recommendations that are coming into play, and Pasadena is sort of leading the charge in that they are making moves to require mask use at all indoor locations again. And it was very recently, as in within the last day, announced that the city of Pasadena will be mandating COVID vaccinations for all of its city employees. Could you take a moment to talk about those things?
Yeah, that is a decision that that I think we're still talking to the city manager about, and the city manager just briefly touched on that yesterday, at a meeting. I don't know if it's been set in stone that he's going to mandate that, to all the city employees. Um, but at the end of the day, if you're interfacing with the public, then if you can be vaccinated, you probably should be vaccinated. The science tells us that vaccinations are good, and it stops the transmission, right? I mean, so, if you're interacting with the public, potentially you should be vaccinated. If you're a trash truck driver, maybe that doesn't make that much sense to be vaccinated because you're just picking up trash cans and you're staying in your vehicle. But if you're a police officer or firefighter, maybe it makes more sense. I think that the city manager is still, at a stage where he is kind of seeking out the best recommendations, um, with that. So, that's still more to come on that front.
Yeah, and
Thanks.
quite honestly, LA County imposed the mask mandate
Before us,
last
yes.
week. Yeah, and for business owners, the challenge they have isn't we have to make people wear masks or we don't. It's that they're uncertain about things. So the certainty of a mask mandate indoors actually helps businesses as long as they don't reimpose capacity restrictions. Because I have the woman who now cuts my hair, was in a quandary because she was trying to find signage that said if you're not vaccinated, you have to wear a mask, and finally LA County had some. But now it's easier for her because everybody indoors is supposed to wear a mask. So she doesn't have to try to distinguish between who is and who isn't. Everybody has to wear a mask, and so it makes life at least predictable, for the near future on that. And I got vaccinated end of February was my second one. Thank you, City of Pasadena Public Health Department. And I feel much more comfortable doing things. I've been on 8 planes since then, and I'm getting on 4 more the week after next. Not all at once, but over the next couple of weeks, I'll be on 4 more. So I'm more comfortable, but there are a whole lot of people out there who are not vaccinated for one reason or another. And those folks are very susceptible to the Delta variant. Was it 97, 98% of the new cases are unvaccinated people. It's a very high percentage. So, for a store to be able to just say, you have to wear a mask, it's for all of our good. And if somebody refuses to wear a mask, they don't have to let them in. Those kind of things. It's a certainty. And they can put the signage up and they don't have to worry about, am I supposed to, am I not? Again, as long as other restrictions don't follow, I think our businesses will be fine with it. for the most part.
Councilmember Hampton touched on this just a moment ago,
Yeah.
that he indicated that there has been some drop off in business, which is the result of the return to a mandate of mask wearing indoors. I was wondering if you could take a moment to see or to discuss what you've seen personally with regard to
Sure.
that.
Sure. Yeah. So this is all hitting us very recent. But the nature of some events that have been planned, the ones we were excited to getting back to normal, it does impact their event, and they are choosing, and it's not a robust number, but it's certainly a few groups that wearing that just does not fit how they want to hold their event. So we'll postpone them. We'll push them further down the line as we've had to do through the course of the pandemic. But the clarity, as everybody has mentioned, very clear direction, people can work with that. So it's something that we'll react to, and we will make sure that all of our clients know that it's a requirement now. But the pushback has been just on if, perhaps it's an event where they had to be sampling food, and that in and on and off of a mask was just inconvenient. For some, the message of their event was coming back together again, it being over, and this feeling like maybe a pause in that just didn't fit the scope of what they wanted to do. So, it's a loss anytime a business has, or an event we have booked, has to postpone. But we've got good communication with our clients and our planners, and they'll come back. They'll come back further down the line, and maybe just have to change the message of what their event was about. So.
Councilmember
Yeah, I would
Hampton,
say,
you were about to make a point. Please
yeah, I was
continue.
just going to make a point about the mask mandate. So the mask mandate makes the most amount of sense, right? And because we know that masks stop the spread. But logistically, in a restaurant, when someone's drinking water, you think they're going to drink the water and then put their mask back on? Right? Or they're eating food, every time they eat it, take a bite, they're going to put a mask back on. That's just logistically, that's not how it's going to work. So the health department is going to be bombarded with emails of every time someone has gone to a restaurant that said, I went to a restaurant, I saw somebody with their mask off for 10, 15 minutes, and they weren't doing anything. So they'll be bombarded with these type of calls. And of course, they're going to try to go out and take it, but they don't have the manpower to uphold a mandate like this. I don't think actually anybody has the manpower to uphold any mandates like this. But it also makes the most amount of sense to put a mask on when you're indoors. I prefer to eat outside personally, but it's going to be an interesting one to follow. And I just, unless you do the complete, which I would not agree with doing any complete closure because there's no science that would back that again this time. But unless it is back to that where it's just outdoor dining, right? Then the mask mandate indoors, maybe inside of a gym, makes some sense, right? Because it's easier to mandate that. But in a restaurant, it's a little harder because people are always drinking. Inside of a gym is actually kind of hard because people try to huff and puff. But at the same time, it's a little easier to mandate it in this place like that. A market, definitely. I don't think I've gone into a market where no one's not wearing a mask still. Actually, maybe Whole Foods. I've gone into some people aren't wearing masks, but for the majority of the people, vaccinated or not vaccinated, it seems like people have masks on in those settings.
I mean, the restaurants have been operating on even before. We're operating under you wear a mask till you get to your table. Once you sit at your table, you're fine. And I think that's going to be more the norm. And there are going to be people who call and complain about pretty much every little thing they don't like. And the health department's used to that. And in a lot of cases, they probably know who those people are. But there is a reality to it that if the tables are far enough apart and that as long as they're wearing the mask till they sit down, I think that'll be fine.
Paul, I'd like
there
to
are
go
going to
back
be
to
there are going to be cases where people are the mask restriction is going to hurt. And I think that's something that we're all going to have to figure out how to cope with and deal with and help with.
I'd like to go back to something that you said just a moment ago, Paul. You touched on the idea that as far as the mask wearing is concerned, uniformity in the policy is what's most important to business owners. But do business owners and operators uh, feel it unfair that they're basically being put in a place where they're responsible for enforcement? Certainly the county has said that you must wear these masks if you're indoors, but it's one thing to say that, it's another thing to actually have to confront a person who walks into your business not wearing that mask.
And that's been a challenge all along for business owners. Um, they're I hope that no one's going to send their employees to physically eject somebody from the store. Confrontation is not what people want. Um, they and that was a challenge previously for some folks. We're in Pasadena where most people follow the rules and regulations, um, and the folks who don't, um, uh, well, everybody else suggests that they do, not the store personnel, the other customers. What I've seen is I've seen people ask somebody to pull the mask up over their nose, that kind of stuff. Politely, but no one's asking the grocery store clerk or the bookstore employee to deal with it. It's just that there is a certainty, and people can be asked, and if they refuse, then it's kind of up to uh, the venue to figure out how they want to deal with it. In most cases, they're not going to confront somebody, um, uh, but they are perfectly within their rights to bar entry, just as the city is within its rights to require that everybody get a vaccine if they intend to continue working there, which the Supreme Court said yesterday, I think, or the day before. Those kind of things. So, no one's really ever asked the the venues, the businesses to be the enforcement arm. If there is a real challenge, it's the same kind of challenge they might face from that same person in other situations. And I imagine they'll call 911, to be perfectly honest, and get appropriate support. Um,
Is that something that the police department is prepared to deal with?
The police department will show up on issues like that. Sorry, we got disconnected there for a little while, but I do know that the police department will show up if there is someone who's refusing to do something that is mandated by and become belligerent about it. So the police department will show up. But for the most part, I haven't heard of anyone just being completely belligerent or up so upset that they had to wear a mask when they entered a location that it became confrontational. For the most part, I receive emails about wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, um, and that's that. Some people say you know they had no mask mandate. I never want to go back to that restaurant or that place again, right? Or the farmers market again. And then some people say they made me wear a mask. I never want to go back to that place again. So I haven't heard of anyone or any operators that have said that someone has come into their establishment and got so belligerent and aggressive to the point where they had to feel like they had to call the police.
Fortunately, it's not like we've seen on some flights recently where we have had people that have basically become combative at the idea that they are forced to wear a mask.
Yeah, luckily we're not an airline.
Okay. Well, certainly the fact that we are seeing this return to the idea of wearing masks in all indoor public settings, and evidently the I believe Councilmember Hampton has said it's more of a flirtation with the idea at this point. They have not, uh, as was reported in the media, committed to the idea that all city employees will be required to be vaccinated yet. But the Delta variant is what is spurring all this discussion. Certainly, we've seen many and heard many reports of the fact that this variant is far more contagious, and the symptoms seem to be as severe, if not more severe, in some cases. Obviously, we have seen all the reports that suggest that for those who are vaccinated, the likelihood that they will develop any serious infection is virtually nil. It's not completely zero, but there have been almost no hospitalizations as a result of infection after vaccination. But is this is the onset of this variant slowing the recovery process? Has it hampered the reopening process in the city?
The officials who have the ability to slow down the reopening aren't doing it. The public health officials, I think they've learned over the last 16 months as well, and I think they also understand there's not it wouldn't be a welcome a welcome occurrence by a lot of people. I think we're recognizing that the vaccine helps. Certainly in Pasadena, the high rate of vaccination helps for Pasadena residents. It still remains a fact that most of the people who are here spending money aren't residents in Pasadena. They come from other places. But I think as more and more people get vaccinated, I think it will further sort of encourage folks, because the challenge right now, quite frankly, isn't so much is a place open or not. It's, are customers comfortable coming back? And I've been, as I said, I've been on 8 planes. The only one that was full was a 20-seat plane. Everything else was not. And in one case, I had the row to myself. People are still not comfortable necessarily getting out there, whether they're vaccinated or not. And I think the for businesses, it's encouraging people to come back and reassuring them that it is safe to come back, regardless of what the situation might be, and having options. As Councilmember Hampton said, he'd prefer to eat outside. Depending on, if it's 110 degrees, I might prefer to eat inside. But yeah, I think a lot of people are making choices like that, and choosing to do. I spend a lot more money right now at the little Italian deli market around the corner from my house than I ever did, because on a week-to-week basis, I can get my bananas and my tomatoes and the stuff that I need on a week-to-week basis from them, as opposed to going to the bigger grocery store. So that's a choice I made a long time ago, and I'm going to keep making. But I think a lot of people are making choices about where they're patronizing based on their own comfort level going there. So one of the challenges, I think, for businesses, challenge for the Convention and Visitors Bureau and any large venue hotel, is to convince the potential customers that it is safe to go.
Jeannie,
Yeah, and I think we took a lot of strides to do that, to make sure that we were all committed to the highest safety and cleanliness standards. That was a lot of the legwork that we did during the pandemic when we were closed, because for a lot of time we had no guidance as to when we could reopen, when we could hold events again. So after June 15th, having that sort of clear signal that we can start to book and hold events in our community, the clients were full steam ahead, and some of them may have to change a little bit of direction with a mask mandate, but there's this pent up demand to meet again, and I think they can work through some of these things. And some of them, there's no requirements for social distancing, but as a planner of a convention, where they used to put 6 people at a table, maybe they're going to put 3. So they want their attendees to feel that they're coming into a safe environment. So they're prepared to plan it in a way that the customer is satisfied and eager to come to these events again. So I think that's working in our favor. The biggest detriment we had during the process was no direction at all. And having any direction has helped give our customers the reassurance that we're here and ready to help them come back to planning events and meeting face to face.
Yeah. The other thing I think we also need to recognize, though, is that there are some things that will be permanently changed.
Right.
And there are, the folks that used to do the sales meetings and fly everybody across the country who are going to do those by Zoom now, because it's less expensive and more efficient. So many people are getting groceries delivered who didn't used to get groceries delivered, who are not comfortable with it. Things like that will change, and I think it'll change the landscape, but also change to some degree um, employment opportunities as well.
Well,
Uh,
it's interesting that you would bring up employment opportunities because one of the unforeseen side effects of the lockdown was that despite everyone going stir crazy and wanting to get out when the city would reopen, what we have seen is that a lot of people are not returning to the jobs. In many cases, we have heard reports of restaurateurs unable to find help to fully reopen their businesses. The same for grocery stores and the like. I'm
well,
wondering if
actually, not grocery stores. What you're finding is there's a real challenge hiring low wage workers. And one of the challenges that restaurants have, and I know I was on a conference call with grocery people a couple months ago when an issue was coming in front of the city council. Grocery stores actually increased their staff by around 50%
Yep.
for the pandemic. And the people they hired people first with customer service experience and people who had experience doing tasks on their own, like stocking shelves. And the customer service experience people are front of house restaurant folks. They hired a lot of people from front of house restaurants, people, the wait staff, the servers. And what they did was they hired them at $20 an hour with a retirement plan and a health care benefits that they didn't get as a restaurant worker. They're not going to leave those jobs because the jobs stayed. Home Depots and Walmarts and Targets, they all did the same thing. The other big challenge on the employment front, quite frankly, is childcare. Um, the people who need childcare, a lot of those low wage workers were women with kids whose kids don't have anywhere to go and nothing to do now, and no place, and they don't have the resources to place them at daycare centers, if there are daycare centers that even have space, because daycare centers, a lot of them closed down too during all of this. So it's a challenge, but it's a real challenge at the low wage. And what we're seeing is that restaurants, if they want to hire people, are having to pay more. Same thing with other low wage jobs. They're having to pay more money to get people to fill those jobs, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I may have to get used to paying a little more for whatever I get in the store, or the restaurant, or whatever, which I can do. But wages may start going up a little bit because of it.
I would like to delve into what challenges are yet to be overcome in the wake of the pandemic and as we continue the reopening. Obviously, there are unforeseen challenges, new variants that may come up that may in fact be more virulent than the strains we're currently seeing. But what are some of the known challenges we have yet to overcome?
Well, I mentioned earlier the one about people having to pay back the rent that they didn't have to pay for 15 months. That's one. I think quite frankly, we all need to get used to the idea that the landscape has changed health-wise for all of us, and that the idea of wearing masks in flu season, and that this is SARS-2. There may be SARS-3 and 4 and 5. So we really need to kind of be prepared for that, and I think hopefully more nimble at dealing with it. But I also think things like the office environment is going to change for a lot of people. Green Dot here, which had a huge amount of space in an office building in East Pasadena, has taken their 12 executives and moved them to Texas. They're keeping a small office here open. All of those people that used to work in those offices are now going to be working remotely. They realized that their workforce spends most of their time on computers. They can do it from their home, wherever their home might be. And so their employment recruiting opportunities just went worldwide. And they can also, negotiate salaries with people based on where they live, as opposed to the high salaries are high in Southern California for the most part. That kind of thing. So, that's the example I know of right now. But I think in office buildings, we may see a constriction of the amount of space that companies take when they decide that their workers can work 50% of the time from home and share a desk the rest of the time. The other 50% of the time. So some of those things may change. There are a lot of businesses that pivoted to doing things online that they will keep doing online. I think a lot of the little restaurants that didn't used to do Grubhub and Postmates and all that will keep doing it because there are a lot of people who are still going to want to get food, but aren't necessarily one. It's convenient if they drop it on your porch, but it's also for some people safer.
Jeannie, I'd
Yeah.
like to ask the same question of you.
Yeah, I
challenges.
think as we're coming back, certainly it's getting people who've not been working in the traditional office setting acclimated again. And there's been a lot of turnover, unfortunately, in the partners that we work with. So we're working through some of those details. I think as far as events go, hybrid will probably have its place as we continue. Being able to, maybe not send 5 people to the meeting, but send 2 and have 3 people capture it virtually is a wonderful sort of evolution of how events can improve in the future. And I think that that's just going to make events stronger if they can garner a larger audience just by dividing that up a little bit. So I think face to face is here to stay. I definitely know people want to get back to meeting together. I know that there's Zoom fatigue, that there's technical problems that people always have. So having people in a room together kind of alleviates that. But their audience and their message can be spread further by having a virtual component always part of their events. And I think, that's just a great evolution of the meetings and the conferences that we're used to. And then just a lot of, I think we've learned to move faster during the pandemic. I've never used so many DocuSign envelopes in my life, but it helps to get things moving faster. We have to do more with less people and lower budgets, but we've become very nimble through the process. And I think that's going to have to continue into the future. And frankly, I think it's an improvement on how we work.
And there are certain things that do not work remotely.
Yeah.
We're doing our big gala event that's usually at the end of June and mid-September, and that's we had a choice to consider doing it remotely, and it's like, what would someone get out of it?
Yeah.
This would not be the same, even if we had the Langham deliver dinner. It's just not the same, and there are certain things that are not the same. We do networking events in person, and we've been doing them on Zoom. And basically, it is not the same. It is not the same. We have to deal with and find out as we get all this going, what are the protocols? What are people safe with? What's the price point? Because quite honestly, things are going to be more expensive because it takes more labor to keep things as clean as we need them to be now. It takes more time, and material costs and product costs and food costs are all going up, which should be no surprise, really, to anyone. So, we all have to sort through those kind of issues, but there are things that cannot happen remotely. But there are other things that can happen very easily remotely. And I think we're all going to figure out what the equilibrium is on that, as well as what the, what the operation will be going forward, because we're wrestling with that now too.
And
As a chamber,
Councilmember
and I know
Hampton,
Jeannie is.
I'd like to ask you, from a city standpoint, what challenges we see in the near future.
One of the challenges in the near future coming out of this will be, employment. A lot of jobs will be lost, but hopefully people are getting ready and being trained to fit the new needs of the new businesses that arrived or the businesses that have changed some of their functions. Just to kind of cycle back to the events, though, I've seen some really cool galas and some new ideas at looking at events, especially fundraising events, which I've seen that they're doing these hybrid functions where there's always someone who wants to participate, but they really can't always participate. And so, um, I've seen these things where they're filming them live, and you could look at the event live. You could even chime in live, kind of like through a Zoom. Um, and there are people there in person, and then I've actually seen an event where it's like four different rooms, and there's a camera in all the different rooms, and you could be in either one of the rooms, and there's more. So it's very interesting the way people are figuring out new ways to do business, but the business behind doing these hybrid events is also a brand new business, right? So, just to chime in, I just wanted to kind of circle back to the original discussion. But yeah, I mean, to go back to your question that you asked me, that is going to be one of the biggest things that we see here coming out of it is, getting people retrained. Also, um, retraining the mind and the brain. And you, like Paul had mentioned, people are extremely nice right now, right? I mean, people are out there saying hello to one another, and it's amazing because I used to have to always tell people like, say hello to someone because you never know what they're going through. I think people realize that, being isolated for almost a year, oh my gosh, I have to say hello to people because now I don't know, they could be going through the same thing I'm going through. So now we're all getting this new level of connection. So retraining the mind around that. Also, um, kind of retraining the mind around, when to wear a mask and when to not wear a mask, right? I mean, people are kind of weary about that. And then also, I would say one of the challenges for people is going to be, is it, a lot of people are thinking, is it safe for me to do this? Is it safe for me to do that? Well, um, you know, I will just say it's not safe to drive, right? It's not safe to get in the plane, but we do it, right? And so we have to continue to live our life and move forward. There are going to be things that we have to be more responsible about, and there has to be things that we have to be really more mindful about moving forward. But we still have to move forward, right? And so those are going to be some of the challenges. Of course, our budget is going to be a challenge. Um, and how we're going to get tax revenue in. Are people submitting property tax? Those are some challenges that we're going to have moving forward. But as we mentioned, the $52 billion is going to be extremely helpful to keep us afloat and to keep those city services that everybody holds near and dear to their hearts as they live in Pasadena.
Thank you so much for your thoughts here. I'd like to say thank you to all of our guests, Paul Little, Jeannie Goldsmith, and of course, Councilmember Tyrone Hampton for joining us this afternoon. And hopefully we can continue this discussion at some other point. To our viewers at home, if there are topics you would like to see addressed in our program, you can email them to us at arroyolive@pasadenamedia.org, and we may include them in a future broadcast. Until next time, this has been Arroyo Live. I'm Joe Carbonetta. Thank you for watching, and good night.